Mr. Fabian, happy Friday. I feel like this is the first official Friday where we have a good setup.
That's
Lights
good.
are good, camera's good, audio's good. We can only pray so, I think, but
If you're listening at home, enjoy it. And if you're watching at home, enjoy it even more.
exactly. That's how it goes. Fabian,
Crazy day.
crazy day, but I can't even remember what was in the news. And I don't but I think we have to follow up a little bit where I remember us talking about how all of a sudden Washington Post allowed an article yesterday
Yep.
that pretty much called Kamala Harris and Tim Walz communists for their price gouging initiative, right?
We said it first here on the show.
We
Don't forget
did.
that.
We did. And we explored the reason why perhaps Jeff allowed that to happen on the Washington Post, because obviously that would impact Amazon. It would impact any big corporation. And when we look back in history, we know price gouging is technically something that communists like to implement.
It definitely is.
So you said, I bet we'll start to see more articles, more platforms, more news outlets
Yep.
coming out and saying, hey, this isn't right. This is a bunch of literally communism. And Fabian, before the show started, what did you send me?
CNN. CNN.
Who?
CNN.
Clinton News Network?
Clinton News Network.
What did they say?
They wrote a piece that was not anti-Kamala, but it was very negative about her position. So we see the second crack starting to open up.
I actually saw The Hill also this morning. I just didn't
The
send
Hill.
it to you. But yeah, because they criticize price gouging. And you and I were talking about it. Maybe a better term for it is price controlling, because
control.
that makes more sense.
Yep.
And it's basically the federal government wanting to say, hey, prices at grocery stores are too high. We're the ones that are going to dictate what the amount is. And again, all this stuff always sounds so fantastic when they said this liberal utopian idea always sounds so fantastic on paper, right? And or when they say it, I don't know if on paper is the right thing, but then when they try to implement it, it leads to horrible things because people don't understand that it will lead to a lot of food shortages. And if they think that COVID-19 toilet pandemic or toilet paper pandemic was bad, wait till you see what a real food shortage is in the United States. And yeah, so price controlling is a much better and effective way, I think, how we can talk about it. And it's crazy to me, again, that CNN is starting to say this because, again, this impacts everybody that remotely owns corporations or anything, right?
Let me explain for those who haven't heard of what price controls is or are, with a perfect example of Venezuela. And let me read you from an article how these food rationing or price controls work. In Venezuela, government supermarkets sell price-controlled food, making them far cheaper than private stores. But Valero explains that people are allowed in state-run supermarkets just 2 days per week, based off their ID numbers. The system is designed to prevent shoppers from buying more than they need and then reselling goods on the black market at a huge markup. God forbid these people actually want to make some money and turn into capitalists and start selling the food they got from the government for more money, thereby keeping the profits for themselves. But no, they can't do that because the government has to get the profit. This has been tried in the USSR. It's been tried, or it's not tried. It's been done in Cuba, USSR, Venezuela, basically every single communist country, and it always leads to food shortages and food rationing. Because why would you produce more as a company if you're not going to make any more money on it? This is the same thing communists always deal with. Why would anyone be motivated to increase production, to increase efficiency, to start a new business if they're not going to make any money? That's the whole point. Otherwise, you're working for free.
Yeah, and the crazy thing also is that it leads to hyperinflation, right, on the very own goods that people are trying to maintain being low. And that's the oxymoron of the whole situation there. My friend Emil, he came from Venezuela, and he tells me that him just sending $20 to Venezuela only gets his mom a huge can of Nutella. And I'm sitting there and thinking, Teddy's over here agreeing with me apparently, but $20 cost a huge thing of Nutella. Like, imagine going to the store and spending $20 on Nutella. And that's how people live in Venezuela, because again, the government has done a lot of stuff to, I guess, control, to maintain power, right?
Yep.
And they say, oh, we can fix everything. We can fix the price of goods. How can we fix it? If you give us control of it. And that's what people are willing to do here in the United States. It's kind of scary. We go on TikTok lives and people all the time tell us, oh, in order to fix that, we just need to let Kamala Harris regulate goods. And I'm like, what?
Yeah, this is, as I said in the last episode, I think she took a step too far to the left. And corporations know that this is death for them. If they allow the government to take this power, we know that the government, once it takes a power, it never gives it up. It never does. That's why the government keeps growing. And if you allow the government to start controlling food prices, like, what's next? Literally, what's next? Because they already control price for something. they can control the price for everything. And that's not a free market at all.
It's not like we
Like,
have a
literally-
free market already, though.
Yeah, imagine that kind of regulation. Imagine that.
Yeah. I mean, we're trying to do like a segment about this whole thing, but I was talking to ChatGPT and I was like, hey, was price gouging ever implemented in USSR or Cuba? And it said yes. The state or the government was able to essentially control all price goods. And by doing so, what ended up happening is that there was a huge shortage on all goods and food, and especially groceries. So that led to a bunch of famine and whatnot, and people dying. Let me let this dog out. Or let's get this dog. Teddy is from Minnesota. It's my dog Teddy. He's our Trump dog. Teddy, go. Look at that. He's our Trump dog, but he's scared of storms for some reason. Sometimes I think, why would Democrats push for this stuff? Why would Kamala Harris and Tim Walz, such prominent Democrats, actually push for this stuff? And the more and more I think about it, especially the more conversations that you and I have, I realize that the left is very much driven by this idea of a cultural revolution. And how can you push this cultural revolution? By making people dissatisfied. And how do you make people dissatisfied? Put them 30, 40 years behind any other country that is not implementing such radical ideas. And when they're not able to afford peas because peas alone cost more than your 3 months salary, and you couple that with like your iPhone is still 30 years behind, people are going to be upset. They're going to demand a drastic change, and that they're going to bring it on because they've been demoralized, they've been normalized to the situation, and now they're just looking for somebody to say, hey, come on, let's do this, let's push this cultural revolution. And that's sometimes I get lost in the idea of why, but it's much more simple than actually people think, in my opinion.
I was thinking the other day about, I forgot what I was going to say.
I was going to say, you could close that door now. Yeah, that way we...
Okay, let's maybe we can switch gears to something.
I was going to pull us perfectly into this. Fabian, Mr. Fabian, it's Friday night. We got a nice little drink in here. We've been talking politics all week long. Yesterday, we left off at a place that you and I both love, which is space. And you specifically were talking about interstellar travel, whatever it is, right? I want to give you two options. That'll be our Friday night thing. You want to talk about space, or do you want to go talk about like ancient civilizations and stuff like that? Space?
100% space.
All right, well, let's dip into space. I'll let you
space.
dictate where this conversation goes, because I'm just going to sit here like a dog ready to listen to anything, because I love space. I don't know too much about it, but I love it. And I just always think such crazy things about it because it just expands and expands. And there's always that question of like, where did we come from?
Yeah.
What was before the Big Bang, for example, right? All these things that happened there. So
yeah. Well, one thing that did happen in the space community this week is that Jeff Bezos, for the first time, allowed somebody to come into Blue Origin, his space company, and take a tour of all the production facilities. And the guy he chose was this guy named Tim Dodd. He's known as your everyday astronaut on YouTube, and I've been following him for years. And he got so big that Elon Musk brought him to Starbase in Texas to see how all the rockets are made. This is like a year and a half ago or so. Well, he just did another episode a few months ago where he was talking about all the new Raptor engines, the new way that they're going to go to Mars and the moon. And then all of a sudden, Jeff Bezos invites him over to go to a tour of his base. And the big thing in the space community was, we all know Jeff Bezos is Mr. Amazon, and he wants to be Elon Musk in the space race. He's about 10 years behind, maybe 5-10 years behind Elon Musk right now. But his company was started before Elon Musk's company. That's actually interesting. But everybody was like, okay, Jeff Bezos is going to give a tour of the entire production facility, meaning where they're making the rockets, the actual, like the engines, every single thing. How is he going to compare it to Elon Musk and what he talks about? Because when he goes with this guy, Tim Dodd, they go super, super deep about everything, because he's a space nerd, obviously. Elon's a space nerd. So I commented, I'm like, yeah, I don't know how well he's going to do. He actually really surprised me with his knowledge of how spacecraft works and how the manufacturing works and how the actual orbital mechanics work, because he really surprised me, and I had to issue a statement, and I said, hey guys, like, not gonna lie, he's legit. Like, he's a legit space guy. He knew about a lot of things.
Were they like criticizing him before, like saying like, oh, he doesn't know anything, he's just trying to compete with Musk and everything? Let me ask you though, they're obviously trying to compete who goes to, I guess, Mars first, right? And puts humans on Mars. Is that the overall idea here?
The legacy is on landing on Mars and the moon. The money is in harvesting asteroids. And it sounds crazy, but
Wait, hold up. What do you mean? Harvesting asteroids. What do you mean?
So they say that the first trillionaire will be the first person to harvest asteroids, because we have a finite amount of precious metals on the Earth, especially gold, titanium, nickel, things like that. But these elements are all around the universe. We just can't get any extra. So a few years ago, Japan sent a little probe, a spacecraft, to an asteroid called Bennu. And they actually landed on this asteroid. It took years to get to this asteroid that was floating in space.
Holy crap.
It landed on it. And then what it did is it wanted to take some sediment from the asteroid back to Earth. So what they did is they literally created an explosion. So it landed on Bennu. It caused an explosion, right? Like a little mini explosion. From the sediment that was kicked up from the explosion, it trapped a little bit of that sediment inside it. And then it blasted off and it went all the way back to Earth. It didn't land. It just dropped the capsule. This is insane. It dropped the capsule and then it actually went back out to go try to land on another asteroid.
Oh my God.
This was a big thing in space. And this is, the Japanese did this. And now they want to try to find an asteroid that has tons of gold, tons of precious metals, and put little spacecraft around it and just push it just a little bit. Because over time, that change in angle will take it to Earth. And then the thought is once it gets to Earth, then somehow they'll just kind of pull it in. And I mean,
put it in orbit and we'll forever be able to come up there and take some stuff. Dude, that's actually pretty sick. And wait, so on this asteroid, it's just a shit ton of diamonds, or?
Well, not that one specifically, but there are ones that they've been able to identify that have diamonds, gold, metals, metals like silver, nickel, everything. Literally everything that you can. Also, the moon. Another reason why they want to go to space first is they want to be the first company on the moon to harvest, which is the moon. The regolith of the moon has a specific thing. I think it's like hydrogen-3 or something like that, which is like really, really, really expensive to produce on Earth, but it's everywhere on the moon. So if they could just bring stuff from the moon, they can invest in material sciences because they have this new thing that they didn't have before. It was really hard to get in any good amount. So that's why they want to go to space.
That makes sense all of a sudden, I'd be doing the same thing. If I had billions and billions of dollars, I'd be doing the same thing, just throwing money on that. And screw it, if I don't have that much money, I'll just be investing. I'll be like, Elon, you need $1 billion? Here you go. Here's $1 billion for SpaceX. Yep. Because that's honestly genius, right? Because at some point, you're going to have to go outside of the Earth to get some sort of resources, whether that is because we're running low on the resources, or we want to technologically advance, or we're just greedy, which is great, right? I mean, that'll be beneficial for us at the end of the day. But it's actually awesome. That's actually a good idea. Fabian, I have another question about space.
Let's do it.
All right. How do we achieve interstellar travel?
Oh, wow.
It's a loaded question.
Well, assuming there's the ability for us to do it, the people who theorize about this, let's not call it interstellar. Let's just call it like we need to go somewhere really, really far, and it's going to take a long time, right? Like 4 light years.
Okay.
Right. Well, I mean,
let me ask you a better question like this then. Let's say they say that there's a planet somewhere 100 million light years away, and we want to get there.
Yeah, that's a great question.
Right? How is that possible to achieve?
So the theory, the prevailing theory is a few ways. Number one, humans can't make it. We only last like 80 years, right? Even if you make us last 130, that's still nowhere near 10, even 1 light year away, right? That's so far away. That's a distance light travels in 1 year. For reference, I believe light travels around the Earth 8 times in 1 second or something like that. Like just insane. So you can't send human bodies, right? We're a bunch of flesh, organs, and stuff. So the theory is you have a few ways. Number one, if you can figure out how to like cryogenically freeze someone for that long of time, then you can do it. But
that's a long time, though.
Well, that's a very long time, so it's very unlikely. What they think will happen is that by the time this kind of gets really creepy, but once we get the ability to download someone's consciousness into a computer, right, because of quantum computers, you would send a spacecraft all the way to where you want it to go, and before it gets there, it would be instructed, this is pretty crazy, they would have seeds, right, or like an embryo or something on board. They would instruct the spacecraft to inject the cells into the embryo or whatever, and then basically create a human about 15 to 20 years before it reaches the destination, and then have some automated system that would teach the human what its role is and what it has to do.
Would this be like a human like you and I, or would this be like a more like infused with some technology?
I assume it'd be
right? Like we actually left off yesterday about, like you said, transhumanism. And I know a lot of people are always so scared of transhumanism, especially conservatives. They're not such big fans of it. Religious people is a better way to put this. They're not big fans of the idea of transhumanism. For the people at home that don't know what transhumanism is, it's just the idea of combining human with some sort of technology, right?
Yep.
But wouldn't you need to have transhumanism in order to achieve this interstellar travel, or to...
If you did it that way, yes, because the human would be a human that was created on a spacecraft, like 1 light year from now, which would be like, I don't know even how long in human years. The other theory is that if you were able to have some kind of robot that can move around and do things, and you would just literally shoot the consciousness, not the conscious, but the brain matter, or all the information in someone's brain in like a data data transfer to the spacecraft. So it would just get there, and you would transport your consciousness into that robot that was in that spacecraft, like 100 light years away,
Wow.
and you just become the robot,
Oh my God.
and then go explore the planet, and then send information back.
The more we talk about this, the more it brings me that what is it? What is it called? The Fermi paradox. Yeah.
Yeah,
Where it's
Rico Fermi.
okay, so I think the whole paradox is that are we alone in this world, right? And if not, then where are these aliens, right? So that's the big idea. Where are these aliens? So this whole idea makes me think about it like this. One side of it, if we are alone, that's hella creepy. But if we're not alone, does that mean that like civilizations die before they actually reach this capability of interstellar travel? Because either that or we're just boring as hell to these aliens and we're just like ants to them, and they're like, why would we even bother going down there? Or let's just screw around with them a little bit. Or
Yeah, I mean, so there's a few theories of that, and yeah, so the Fermi paradox says that like there's a certain point where humanity tends to kill itself, or sorry, civilization tends to kill itself because they have the means to destroy the entire planet they live on, and because of interactions between different species, they eventually lead to that. So the other theory is obviously the Kardashev scale. So the Kardashev scale, he's a Russian guy, and he created like types of civilization. So 0 would be just very primitive. 1, a type 1 civilization, would be a civilization that can harness the power of its own Earth, meaning you can harness all the power that's all the sun that's hitting the Earth, all the energy. So we're like 0.7 right now to 1. Type 2 civilization would be one that can harness the power of its actual star, right? So you know how you
what
have,
do you
like,
mean? What does that mean? Unpack that for me real
okay,
quickly.
so you have a massive ball of that's burning in the sky, right? The sun. That's all the energy that we get for our solar system. So we get like what, a fraction of 1% that hits Earth because it's blasting out in all different directions. So what they theorize is that a type 2 civilization could harness the power of its whole sun to create energy. So basically the way it would work is
And
you would
use
have
it for what? What would you use it?
for whatever, literally just to build more, to expand more, whatever a civilization needs. And the theory is that you would have, in order to do that, you would have to surround the sun with spacecraft to harness all the, like literally create a bubble around the sun, like a troika doll, right? It's called a Dyson sphere. But then they're like, okay, how would we actually make that many robots to cover the sun, which is ridiculous? Well, if you have self-replicating robots, so robots that build other robots, in just a few generations, you would have enough to do that because it grows exponentially. So one will build 1, 2 will build 2 more, 4 will build 4 more, and by the time you get to 16, you have like a ton.
And that was stage 2, right?
That's a stage 2 civilization. Stage 3 is when you can harness the entire power of your galaxy, so all the stars in your galaxy.
That's absolutely
And then
crazy.
stage 4 is when you can harness the power of the universe.
Wow. Okay. You blew my mind enough for tonight. Actually, one more thing about this. One of the craziest things I think I've seen so far related to space is like the telescope that they launched, I don't know, not too long ago. And they were able to finally open its eyes, essentially, just take a scan of what's around us. And what they realized is that all these dots that we're seeing are actually different galaxies, and that there's just billions of us. And one of the coolest things I've seen so far from the telescope is this very, very tiny red faded dot, essentially. And they say that that is the oldest galaxy that we can see. Essentially, that is kind of like milliseconds after the Big Bang. Do you think we'll ever be able to see what was, I guess, before the Big Bang? And also, I guess my question is this, like, or I guess not my question, but I heard somebody say that that question may not even like be a legit question, because we understand time because we have like a day we were born, and we can also say, okay, what happened before the day I was born? But you can't really maybe ask that with the Big Bang of like what was before, because that's just a dumb question. Not a dumb question, but it's like,
Yeah, to your first part, yeah, the James Webb telescope, it's a deep field telescope, so it's not meant to see things nearby. It's meant to see things really, really far away, like you said, like right by the Big Bang. So it's really proven a lot of things that people thought we knew about space wrong, or at best dubious. So we thought we knew the expansion rate of the universe, but actually now with the James Webb telescope, we're getting different data. So like we don't even know how fast the universe is expanding. You know, there's all these things that we thought we knew that are being disproven by James Webb because we can see further. Before that, we just had the Hubble telescope, right? We had a few others, but that was the main one. But that only saw very near things. Because we're seeing so much further, it's like not having glasses and having glasses, right? And you got to see, is that a red light or a green light? Well, if you have no glasses on, you probably can't see. You can make out a little bit. You put your glasses on, you're like, whoa, okay, I thought it was green, but it was red. And that's kind of what's happening in the space community. So it's really cool to see all these theories being disproven or being challenged. And then as far as, I forgot the second part here. Oh, if we can ever see before the Big Bang. Well, if you think about time, time moves forward in a cone. So if you're also moving forward in your cone in time, but your cone is faced. Remember, it's like a bell, right? You start here and it expands this way.
Yeah.
But if something else started here and it's expanding this way, you may never cross paths. So your two dimensions or whatever may never cross paths.
Is that what it is? That there's like multi dimensions? You think?
That's the
like
theory.
That's the theory, right? Is that we're just like everything we can see is like one bubble, I guess, and there's multi of these bubbles.
Oh, multi-universe.
along these them. Yeah.
That could very well be. It's cool to think about that stuff because we just don't know.
Yeah.
Like, are we one little cell in a body, right? And the Earth is just one cell, and then maybe like the nucleus is the sun, and there's a bunch of cells everywhere, and it's all part of one thing. But we're so little, we have no idea.
And it makes sense. And the craziest thing about this too is that if that's the idea, and then let's say somebody is trying to figure out the perfect world or whatever, and there's just experimenting, and there's billions and billions of these experiments, and we're just the only one that succeeded to create this human life, this intelligent human life, although some of us are complete idiots. Oh, Fabian, we could talk about space all day long, but why don't we switch more gears?
Let's do it.
What else we got?
Well, I mean, we can talk about the UFC. We can talk about Trump. We can talk about
We got football coming up.
football's coming up.
There's a lot. I don't even know. I'm excited. I'm a big fantasy football guy, so, and I don't know. Maybe this will be just completely off topic whatsoever, but I actually didn't like football whatsoever 3 years ago, and then about 2 years ago I started betting on it, and I guess I started to remotely watch it, but I didn't know any positions. I didn't know any players.
Oh, you never
teams.
done football before?
No,
Oh,
not at all
interesting.
whatsoever. I didn't play football in high school, middle school, none of that stuff. I played tennis, so
Mm-hmm.
I never really paid attention to it. I go to like the high school football games, but care less about like NFL, college football,
Yeah.
all that stuff. And then I started watching it just because I was betting on it. But then my buddy got me into fantasy football 2 years ago, and I know every freaking player, quarterback,
Yep.
running back, wide receiver, all that stuff. And it's honestly been one of my favorite sports. But
Yeah, it's fantasy football got a lot of people into football that weren't into football just because once you're invested in it and there's money behind it, you're like, hey, I need to know what I'm doing or else I'm going to lose my money. So you learn.
yeah.
You learn.
You get some heated moments, but one thing that hasn't happened so far in my league is something always happens in like during the fantasy like league that somebody drops out, so nobody ever does the punishment. But I've seen some crazy punishments though, like people doing some crazy. I can't remember any of them.
So wait, this is punishment in. I've
So
never played fantasy
so
football.
basically, there's a thing that like you decide before the season starts in fantasy football that whoever gets last place in the league has to do a sort of punishment.
Like a hazing or
Like
something.
a hazing
Okay.
thing, whether it's standing outside of a stadium saying I lost fantasy football and you're wearing something stupid, or my buddies are doing this thing where they're going before they draft this season's players and whatnot. They're going to go to a cabin with all the people that were in the league last year, and they're going to spray paint this guy, not spray paint, paintball this guy as he runs a 40-yard dash. So there's a bunch of things like that in my league.
That's funny,
right?
actually.
In my league, they recommend things like that. When we vote on it, there's things like you having to go to a baseball game. So 9 endings, 9 hot dogs, and 9 beers. You have to finish all those before the game ends. So stupid
9
things.
hot dogs, 9 beers. Oh,
There's
my
a thing
God.
too that where you have to get blackout drunk the night before and then go take an SAT in the morning. And you're like 30 years old amongst these like 17-year-olds absolutely hungover. And then even some leagues go even crazier where they say, hey, if you fail the SAT, you have to go there again. And
Oh my God.
oh my God, there's
Love hazing.
Yeah, love hazing, right?
Love hazing. That's funny, actually.
I know.
Yeah, I didn't know that was a thing in fantasy football, but it makes sense.
It does. It does. Pyramids. That's what I was thinking about. We had to take
Oh,
a
the
little break
pyramids.
from space for a second before
Yeah,
we went
yeah,
to,
yeah.
something so drastic like pyramids. But all right, let's go backwards. People say the pyramids were built by like aliens or something like that.
And my response is, where's the proof?
Okay, well, here's the proof is that people like Graham Hancock will at least say that it was an ancient lost civilization. Do you believe in that? Because apparently to be able to put these blocks above the king chamber, it's very, very big, heavy blocks. There's no way that slaves were able to do this or a boring civilization. He says that it's some lost ancient civilization that did this. That's also why people believe that aliens did this. You've been there, so tell me.
I'm a big history buff, and I remember when the History Channel switched to all alien stuff, and it was a marketing play, and I get it because they needed to get more people in, but it ruined the History Channel. If you go on it now and you watch it, it's all aliens or ancient civilization. It's all this. It's so gimmicky, right? There's been many people who have actually figured out how to move very, very large stones just using balance and using like its center of balance. Basically, there was this guy I believe in Scotland in the late 90s. He figured out how to move these like massive, like, I don't know, 20-ton stones or something like that, just using pegs. and it's actually really easy. All you do is you get these little wooden rollers, like wooden pegs. You put it under the stone, so you tilt it, get it under, and now you can roll the entire stone.
Yep.
Right? And then all you do is you get some kind of handle and you would fix it to the rock, and they push it, and they can churn this massive stone because you're using wooden pegs on the bottom, and then you're using a lever to push it.
Yep.
So they figured out many ways that you can do this. We don't know how they did it, obviously, but there are, around the 3 big pyramids, there's a ton of small pyramids, and all those pyramids were the workers and people who died building the pyramid. So remember, they had slaves. They didn't care if 20,000, 100,000, a million died. This was going to make their civilization.
Yeah. My friend and I always argue about this because this guy that I'm referring to, Graham Hancock, he's a pseudoscientist. So he, again, he's taken a lot of drugs. So when he goes to these, places, these archaeological, what are they called? Fields and whatnot?
Like finds, digs.
Finds, right?
Yeah.
He may see things that you and I wouldn't see because we don't ingest into or whatever it's called. We don't take like Molly or whatever acid and all these stuff and go to these places and see stuff. But yeah, he really believes, and what he will say to the claim that you made actually is that this ramp that you're talking about would define all physics. That there's no way that you'll be able to bring these heavy blocks up the ramp using this mechanism of rolling them on stones. Mm-hmm. And when I brought this up to my parents, because I remember seeing his podcast a long time ago, and my friend always argues the same exact point. Sorry that I'm calling you out over here. I think you'll enjoy the shout out at least. Is that it was actually much more simpler than that than we can think of. Is that they actually probably put it on like a weight balance thing where they would put one block in order to get it up a certain way, and then they could roll it around to wherever they need to using the ability to get it up there like that.
Yeah, there's many ways that people figured out how you could potentially do this. We don't know how, but there's a lot of ways you can do it. But what's actually creepy, I don't know if you've heard of Göbekli Tepe.
Yes, bro,
right.
Come on, hit me with it. Another thing me and my friend always argue about, because again, they say, look at the structures, look at all these 3D things that they like carved out on these stones. It has to be an ancient civilization. And I'm like, dude, it's hunter and gatherers. At the end of the day, it looks like a ritual spot, but go ahead.
Yeah, one of the most interesting thing is that they find these handbags. They call them the handbags of the gods, I believe.
Yes.
And they find them all these old archaeological sites, and they're like, well, if they're all the same, it has to be something crazy. Like they had the spirit in there, or that's how they contact the aliens, blah, blah, blah. Well, I mean, if you think about it, you had to weigh things back then, right? You had to weigh things to know how much to barter, how much to trade. So they think that these things were just weights, and they were very important because that's how you knew how much to barter with whatever trades you were, that you were trading, or rather whatever goods you were trading. And because that's the only way that you can carry something is with a handle, it just became ubiquitous. So now obviously we don't know, but that sounds pretty logical to me.
It's very reasonable. And that's the thing, is that majority of the times to these like crazy questions of like, what is these handbags? Or like, have you seen the bracelets, the green bracelets, right? There's always a more logical reason for that. And Göbekli Tepe is a great example of that, actually. You don't need to think that some lost ancient civilization that we don't know about had some crazy tools and ability to do all this crazy stuff. There's a bunch of bored people majority of the time that were looking for places to make beautiful things out of them for rituals, so they can sacrifice animals there, pray to whatever gods they want to, organize together with other hunters. And Göbekli Tepe is nothing more than that. And when they carbon date it, it goes anywhere between 8 to 13,000 years ago, which is why there's this claim of like, wow, there's an ancient lost civilization. But actually, Göbekli Tepe is in Turkey, South Turkey, and one of the first, or the first, advanced civilization that we know of are the Sumerian people, and they settled down along like Iraq, right, along the river in Iraq, and that already we can point towards an advanced civilization. And when I say what is an advanced civilization, I mean not like some tools that you can carve with or whatnot, language, actually being able to trade, maybe writing some stuff down, and that is the Sumerian. Now what would be interesting is if the hunter and gatherers that were constructing Göbekli Tepe, because as they're uncovering it, they're seeing that it's much bigger than we can see right now. Maybe that is the civilization that eventually went south because of whatever reason possibly was happening there, to eventually establish the Sumerian people that we know of today.
Maybe those are the original patriots and didn't like the government, so they left. I mean, that's a very plausible possibility. What pisses me off is when I see places like these ancient sites with these beautiful structures. I'm like, how is it that people 20,000 years ago, 15,000 years ago, however long it is, can draw better than I can? That's what really makes me mad.
Yeah.
These guys are creating statues, and I can draw SpongeBob.
I know, right? It's
That's
what I
a
think about
big
all the time.
difference
I'm like, dude, they didn't have anything. I have all these tools to be so creative and to draw it the best way. I can't even do a perfect circle.
But they didn't have iPhones or Uber Eats. So
That's all that matters right there, right?
Yeah.